All right. Hi, everyone. It's Erica with BWISE, Black Women in Science and Engineering, and we're here again this week. And we are going to be talking with the fabulous Catherine McNeil. She's going to be finishing up our series, Career 101, Career Development 101, the speed dating of career preparation. So there was so much good information that she had. We wanted to make sure that we completed it and showed all the things that she's got to share with us, and certainly take any questions that you guys have out there. So everybody, welcome. I'm so excited to be back. So I'll turn it over to Catherine. For those of you who don't know Catherine is out of Chicago. She has a company, CHBM Services, and she is your one-stop shop for all things related to your career. I'll let her tell a little bit about herself, and then we'll go ahead and kick off tonight's topic. And you guys, make sure you comment, let us know. Those little hands at the bottom of our pictures tell us if we are saying something right and you agree with us. So you guys, welcome to the show, and we'll go ahead and get started. Catherine, take it away.
All right. Good evening, everyone. For those of you who joined us last time, welcome back. And for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, like Erica said, I'm Catherine McNeil, president and founder of CHBM Services. We're career and employee development, and we are everywhere at CHBM Services, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and myself, everywhere. So you can research, you can like, you can follow, and you can get involved on any of the social networks. With that being said, we're gonna pick up today where we left off, which was with the interviewing, and what we're looking at is the Development 101 guidebook, which I call the speed dating guidebook to employment. This document is on my Facebook page at CHBM Services. It is located at the top of the page. It's in my career development group, so you can get it there, or you can go on LinkedIn and you can find it in the slide share too, so that you can catch up and follow along. But to bring you up to speed, the things that we've covered thus far was, of course, the applying process. That can be tedious, but it's very much important, and you have to take that seriously, because that next to the resume is your intro into that employer. That's that first look. The one document that we spent the most time on last time was the resume, because that is very important. That is your first introduction to that employer. That document in and of itself is that first impression that you get before they ever see you, before they ever want to talk to you, before they want to take it a step further to get you to interview. They are looking at that resume. It should be neat, it should be pristine, and it should be impactful. And then that, once you go ahead
and error free. I had someone say error
and error.
I've had recruiters say that if they find an error, it could be something simple, that sometimes they take that as, a lack of detail awareness, and, they'll discard your resume for something simple like a typo or something like that.
And the reason for that, Erica, is because on average, every job posting gets between 250 to 350 applications for that posting. Recruiters, hiring managers do not have time to get to know you. They have to use the process of elimination. Mm-hmm. And what better way to determine whether or not a person is serious is to look at this first presentation. Right. If you don't take the time to create a document that will give me the impression that I need to want to have a further conversation with you, and do something as simple as spell check and proofread, then I know that you don't have attention to detail, and I don't want to go any further with you. So that is exactly the mindset behind that. It has to be keyword optimized, and it has to be error free. And for those who don't know what keyword optimization is, that is simply having those trigger words that are listed in the job posting that are buzzwords for the industry, having those listed inside of your resume. That sincerely helps when it comes to the automated services that are used now that help to screen through resumes. And then that's what the recruiters and the hiring managers are looking for.
Right.
Sometimes you can get past a recruiter because, as we were discussing offline, they don't always necessarily know the ins and outs of the position. So they just know what they're looking for.
Right.
So sometimes you can get past a recruiter without the keyword optimization, but that's not something that you want to take a chance on.
Right.
You want to have your resume geared towards, the industry in which you work.
Right. Okay.
So with that being said, let's jump right in and talk about interviewing.
Okay.
This is, you've submitted the resume, you've impressed a recruiter. Now you're moving on to that hiring manager. Now you're going to bring to life everything that was written on that sheet of paper in person. Every single thing you do from the time you walk in and introduce yourself to the receptionist is a part of your interviewing process. And actually, I can take you back one step. Everything that you do from the time the recruiter or hiring manager contacts you to schedule that actual in-person interview is a part of your interviewing process.
Right.
They're monitoring the way you answer the phone, how your tone is. If they called you when you have a crazy voicemail, that's something that is taken into consideration. Looking on every network they can find when they Google you.
Now, because some of these things, I think some of us are like, what? That's unacceptable. So what do you mean when you say a crazy voicemail? You mean anything besides, hi, this is Erica, please leave a message? Is that what you mean? Something that could be construed as not professional? Is that what you mean?
Absolutely. Your voice, if you are looking for a job, you are currently seeking, that is what you're doing. Your voicemail should be short, simple, and sweet. And any variation, hi, this is, if you choose to leave your name, you don't necessarily have to, because you can do, how you reach me, I'm unavailable, leave a message at the tone. That's safe, that's clean, that's neat.
Right.
You keep moving. But if you have music playing in the background, you sound like you're partying, there are children chirping, or your baby's on your voicemail, things like that may necessarily, they give away things that you don't necessarily want to share. Again, hiring managers are looking to weed and find the best person for the position. That is what they're trying to do. So you will be judged. Is it fair? Not necessarily, but the reality of the situation is I still haven't talked to you, so you haven't impressed me enough to look past these things. So now I've called you, and your wonderful little 3-year-old has, picked up your voicemail, and they've left this adorable message, and that's great. Now I know you have a child. I know that I may necessarily need you to work overtime.
That's so interesting. Things that we don't necessarily think of as something a recruiter will take as a negative. You're right. You don't want to have anything, you want to make it obviously through the process to the interview. And you certainly don't want something simple that seems innocuous, derail, your chances of getting an interview, something like that. Or, I was just talking to someone about, baby, I have a dog, so I have to make sure the dog is put up, when I'm on these calls, because you just don't want to have anybody use anything, to exclude you from moving forward in the hiring process. So.
And another key thing, if you're not a morning person, don't answer calls from numbers that you do not know. And I just suggest that.
Say that one more time, because you cut out.
Because your tone when you if you're not a morning person, I suggest you do not answer phone calls from numbers that you do not know in the morning. But I also suggest that for throughout the day, because that dry tone comes across in the way that you answer the phone, and you're being judged for that.
Right.
So, are a lot of very small things that people would consider to be tedious that are very big deals from our standpoint, because we,
Right.
we read you that way. You're looking for a job. So we expect, certain things from you. And that's one of them. When you answer the phone, even if it kills you, smile, because you can hear that, and you can hear that in your tone. So let's see. We've talked about the voicemail. We've talked about the way that you answer the phone. Your correspondence through the email. Be polite at all times. Period. It's a part of the interviewing process. That recruiter will become your BFF. That will
Catherine,
be
you're breaking
the person
up.
that you have the relationship with.
Can you hear us? You're breaking up. Okay.
I can.
Now you sound perfect.
Can you hear me?
I just want to make sure everybody's hearing you, because you're breaking up, but you sound good now.
Okay. So I'll make sure I try to sit still so so we can catch everything.
Yeah, we're on the edge of our seats. We got to hear all this good information.
So what was I saying? Voicemail, clean, short, pristine, no background noise, no children, no jargon, none of that. Neat, sweet, to the point. Hi, I'm unavailable. Leave a message. I'll call you back. Okay. Erica, looks like we lost, but I'll keep going, and Erica will us when she logs back in. So that's that. If you're not a morning person, if you're not an afternoon person, if you're not a middle of the day person, do not answer any calls from numbers that you do not know. Your tone is everything. Personality breathes through the phone. So make sure that you put a smile on your face when you answer. I always suggest that you call back from the voicemail. Always let them leave you a voicemail. Prepare, because you apply to a number of jobs. You don't always necessarily know who people are. Sometimes it takes them a month or so to call you back. So let them leave you a voicemail. Take a few minutes. Go look up the position, because you should be keeping a log of the positions that you have applied for, so that you can stay on top of this. Go look up that position, that job description, whatever the case may be, and then call them back informed with your A game. If you're contacted via email, it's the same conversation. And I know we get excited, oh my God, they're reaching out to me, yada, 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 and it's all fine and dandy. But again, that email correspondence is a part of that interviewing process. You want your A game. You want your best foot forward at all times. So you want to watch things like typos. Some design managers are just that meticulous where they will count you out. Others, on the other hand, may be a little more open-minded. You'll never know. So do your due diligence and take your time and be prepared. And as I was saying, in regards to the recruiters, they will become your BFF. They will be that one person who will actually reach out to you and communicate with you while you're going through the hiring process, and they'll keep you abreast of what's going on. You want that person to be on your side. They have connections inside of that company that you need. So you may not necessarily do well with this particular position, but when they like you, they keep you in mind for things that may fit. And they will submit your resume for you.
For some reason,
you have a question.
You've gone from perfectly clear to breaking up. You want to refresh and see if that'll help? You've been perfect for the first probably 5 minutes, but now I'm getting every third word.
Okay. Let me see.
And then it'll ask you to come back in. Can you guys still hear me fine? Can everybody hear me? May have been on my side. I just want to make sure everybody can hear. Catherine, can you see? Oh, there she is. All right, bear with us. We got a little technical difficulty here. We'll be right back. Catherine's calling in. While we're waiting for Catherine, does anyone have any questions in particular? I know some of this is very insightful, the way that recruiters think and things that can easily discount you from the process. So for those of you who are on the Blab, anybody have any questions for Catherine while she's coming back in particular about the interview process or before the interview process or working with recruiters?
Are we good? Can you hear me and
sounds
see me
great.
now? Okay. All right, cool beans. So with that being said, where were we? We were talking about the recruiter being your BFF, correct? Okay. So with that being said, develop a relationship with that person. Remember, this is still a part of the interview process, but you want to develop a relationship with the recruiter, because even if it doesn't work out with the position that they're interviewing you for, if they like you, they'll keep you in mind for other positions and they will recommend you.
Right.
So everything is about networking. We mentioned that in the last session. The relationships you build, they're everything for you.
Right.
And a recruiter is another resource. And a recruiter is an inside resource.
Right. Now, when you say recruiter, are you talking about the external recruiter? Are you talking about the internal recruiter, or does it matter? Are there different?
Everyone.
Okay.
Headhunters typically work for you. Recruiters can be either or. They can be third-party resources, or they can be internal recruiters for that company that only recruit for that specific company.
Okay.
Whatever third party you're conversing with, treat them like the resource that they are.
Okay.
Especially if they're internal, because again, they work for HR for that company, so they know everyone.
So if you've got a good relationship with them, when a position comes up again and they remember you, they'll call you. And, if you were maybe the second runner up in that position, maybe that moves you a little farther ahead than, someone that they're starting all over with. Okay, I get it.
Absolutely. So now we've moved past the recruiter. They've called, they've left their voicemail, you've prepared, you've called back, you've had that conversation, you've knocked their socks off, and they say, okay, we're interested in either you doing another phone interview with the hiring manager or you coming in person. Now, this is the good part, because this in-person overview is where people typically drop the ball. In 2016, business casual means a lot of different things, and it shouldn't in any way, shape, fashion, or form. Unless you're going to an interview in the fashion industry, you are to be as simple and basic as you possibly can. And some of us have a natural flair. So, the most you can do is have on a pretty nail polish color for women, or have on a belt for men that no one can see. Because the reality of the situation is, depending on what I'm interviewing you for, I know what the salary range is. So if you come in looking like you stepped off the cover of GQ and this is an entry-level position, I know I can't afford you. And it's not that I necessarily can't afford you. It's that I know from your presentation what you're looking for. We need not have this conversation. This position pays $45,000 a year. You're walking in here with $5,000 worth of wardrobe on. This might not be the best fit for you. So what I typically do is I have a very boring, it's a very boring interview shoot. It's a somewhat rounded toe. It's not even an inch heel. It's a black basic shoe. You wouldn't catch me in that shoe anywhere outside of an interview. And I have another slightly more fashionable closed-toe shoe that I use as well. It's a dark gray. Okay, and notice the colors that I'm saying. When you go on an interview, black, dark gray, navy blue, a black, gray, or blue pinstripe. Sometimes around it depends. I would kind of stay away from that, but khaki works if you have nothing else. And white shirts. Sometimes you can do, like an eggshell or ecru, which are different versions of whites per se. You can do grays and things of that nature, but for the most part, you always want to stay close to the white.
Now we have a comment. We've got a comment, and
I see that.
BWISE is targeted at middle to senior level. So, hopefully by this point in our career, it's okay. We, most of us may be, farther along or more senior than making $45,000. So the question is, should you just for the job you have or for the job you want? And,
once you get the job,
you can start wearing your regular clothes.
Once you get the job,
okay,
bring your A game. Okay. Bring your A game. Because I do not disagree with that statement, but that statement has nothing to do with
So for the interview,
this is about
right. So for the interviews, you're just trying not to be memorable in a negative way, I guess is a way to say it, right?
And you don't want to outshine the person that you're interviewing with. That intimidation is a very, very real thing. Women, we have the tendency to be catty. And from a male standpoint, if you're interviewing with a man, you don't want to be attractive to him. You want the focus of that conversation to be about what you bring to the table, not your physical appearance. So, by all means, you are to be clean and pristine and neat. But unfortunately, your attire should be somewhat boring. It's not going to be the attention grabbing attire. You're going on a date or you're something along those lines, because the type of position where you have to be in front of people per se, like if it's fashion or if it's some type of TV personality, something where you are judged for the way that you look, then know the industry in which you're applying for. But for the most part, for office jobs and customer service jobs and things of that nature, appearance matters from the standpoint of you being well put together.
That's true.
Not how cute you are. So with that in mind, then you keep those simple steps. From the color standpoint, shoes are the same way. Black, you can do a brown, a darker brown, a navy blue or a gray. Slacks for men, same thing. Shirts, pretty much of the same family. Stripes are always good. You want to stay away from flashy colors, pinks, reds, and things of that nature. It's a little bit more of a scientific methodology behind that, only because of the fact that, colors evoke different emotions. So you don't want to wear red, because that's an attracting color and things of that nature. Blues are good because it's warming and it's comforting. So if you ever pay attention to advertisements, there is a reason why they use certain colors, depending on the audience, depending on the mood that they're trying to invoke and things like that. We could talk about that for 4.5 days. So I'm not going to get into that. But that's just somewhat of the reasoning of why, you pay attention to these colors. So we want to stay away from a lot of jewelry. I would say don't do any if you possibly can. Again, it's distracting. small earrings for ladies. No more, like if you wear hoops, nothing larger than a dime size. Again, distracting. If you have all types of different hair colors and things of that nature, you can't necessarily make your hair color one color. You want to wear, a simple hairstyle like what you have. Put it up in a bun. Something, again, that's not distracting. If you wear glasses, wear your glasses. It is what it is with that one. But less is more, because again, we want that focus to be on what you bring to the table and not how you look. So now you walk in, you greet the receptionist, you greet everyone, the person in the elevator, the whole 9 yards. You are on your A game. Why? Because you have no idea who is who. You have no idea who knows you're coming. You just don't know. So you always want to give that great first impression. Now you get in front of the interviewer, you sit down, and you're having the conversation that you need to have. And I say conversation because interviews are two-way streets.
Right.
Yes, you have something to add to that company, but that company, if you're interviewing with them, should be adding to you as well. So you need to interview them as much as they're interviewing you. Hiring managers want you to be engaged and ask questions. They really do.
That has a lot to do with confidence. If you are confident in yourself and your ability to do that job, I feel like you are more likely to ask those questions, because you should determine whether this is a good fit for you, especially if you're interviewing with the hiring manager. Is this going to be someone you could work for or with? So you should be gathering all that information. I know a lot of us go in, and I've seen this article here on LinkedIn recently, as if, we're begging for these jobs. Please, Mr. Hiring Manager, please give us this job, and I think, number one, you're not coming from a position of power, but also if you're going in like that, are you missing some signs that's going to tell you this is not going to be a good place to work? These are not the type of hiring managers or coworkers or whatever that, are going to be conducive to your personal development and growth. Not that they're there for that, but, there are some people who actively work against that. So I totally agree. You should get to the point where you're like, listen, I understand what you are looking for, and this is what I have to offer. And on the flip side of that, I'm trying to figure out if this is a place that I want to bring my talents and my skills, and how am I going to thrive and grow and develop here too. So absolutely. Janice says, I always ask interview the employer at the end. Okay, that's her tip. She interviews the employer at the end.
And that's a good trait to have. And that shows engagement and interest. Because again, we can tell if you're just here because you need a job, or if you're here because this is something like someplace that you're really considering growing with. I mentioned this in the last Blab. Approach your job search like your dating life. Some people probably shouldn't, because they might not put the necessary
if you've
care
got
that
bad
they
relationships, don't do that.
Don't do that, right? But if you are the type of person, that really does put the time and energy into who you spend your time with, apply that same time and energy to your job search, because we can tell. And it helps separate you from someone who has identical qualifications, but their interview was dry. The little things that we take for granted are the things that absolutely make the difference. When it comes down to, Joe Bob, who was a perfect fit on paper, but his in-person skills aren't the greatest. You, who may not have necessarily been a perfect fit per se, but your personality was like absolutely wonderful. So I know I could work with you and I could train you to be exactly what I want you to be. I'm going to take the chance on you. Period. That's the reality of the situation. You can't train character. who someone is that's them. So you hire character and you train skill.
It does. And I think for us, you know, in this group, those of you who are joining us, Black Women in Science and Engineering, you know, there are so many challenges. I don't think I'm overstating this for some of us, not all of us. I know there are some women who've, you know, had a fabulous career, but for some of us, you're already at a disadvantage. They already think that you're part of a quota. And so they're trying to figure out how you got, you know, to the level you're at and how you're gonna, you know, fit into this corporation. So I believe that you're right. You have to bring your very best self and, you know, try to build some kind of rapport with that person so that you can show not just what you've done before, but what you're capable of, because most likely you're not going to work for your direct competitor. And even if you did, you would still have to learn what they did. So any new job you get, you're going to have to learn it. But they, you know, people today are hiring people who can, you know, start on day one. There's no more 6 months for you to get familiar with the territory and the job. They expect you to be producing results on the first day. You better be making a phone call, you know, if you're in sales, to those customers so that you can start winning business right away. There's no more, oh, well, take time to figure it out. And, you know, we know that in a couple of weeks you'll be up. No, they want people who are hitting the ground running.
That is the absolute truth. And one thing that we have to make sure that we own and we avoid is attitude. And to piggyback off what you said, I'm not extremely familiar with the STEM community from a African American woman side. Most of the people who I know that work in STEM are African American male. So I've, you know, heard the stories and things of that nature. And there is a stigma that is attached to that. So with that being said, we have to use that stigma to work for us and make sure that that attitude and that expectation that we'll be treated a certain type of way because that's the norm does not come across in anything that we do, because regardless to whatever, that is the expectation. And you'd be surprised where it might not necessarily be that prevalent. People want to be proved wrong. There will be some people who are stuck in their ways. You know, the good old boy network is the good old boy network. It is what it is. And your job is not necessarily to change anyone's mind from that standpoint. But what you can do is make sure that you don't play into it in any way, shape, fashion, or form. My nephew was recently interviewing, and he's in IT, and he's, you know, telling me some interesting stories. My father's in IT. There's a lot of people in my life that's in that industry. And there's fortunately and unfortunately a humility that has to come, because you know certain things. You know that they're looking at you and trying to figure out, how in the world did you get here? So your focus is then show them. And don't be any of the things that you think in the back of their mind they're assuming that you are. And that's with anything. You know, when they see a black woman with natural hair coming, you know, they're thinking, fight the power. Oh my God, she's gonna be on a soapbox. And I do not go to interviews with my hair naturally curly. Corporate America is not quite completely ready for that yet. That's not the first impression that you want to give, because they have shut down on you. They're not listening to anything that you have to say or your credentials now. They're assuming that you are going to start a revolution and it's going to be a problem. Is it right? Not at all. But it's the reality of the situation. So you take that and you own it. Now, when I'm in my position and I'm comfortable, I'm me. But that's, you know, after I've gotten it. And it's just the reality of the workplace. And until we get to the point where we own Fortune 500s and, you know, 5,000s and things of that nature, you have to learn to play the game. And that's why this interviewing process is so very important. I don't like going into the office being plain. I feel like that's a dumb down from my fashion sense. But the reality of it is I know Like, I know what's expected. I know what's at stake. So if for 20 minutes, like I have to not look like I stepped out on the runway, then it's well worth it. Because now I'm where I should be. So, our attitude, our dress, our routine, interaction, all of this is part of the interviewing process. And then how do you answer these questions? How familiar are you with your own resume? You need to review your resume on a regular basis and have stories. Yes, stories to tell in regards to the things that you've said you've done. Behavioral interviews are key now. That is what everyone is doing. And why? Because we don't have 6 months to get to know you to find out that you lied about everything that was on your resume. We need to, catch this now. So you will get questions in 30 different ways that ask, give me a time when.
Right.
Because this is something that you said you've done. There will be questions without fail that will ask you about a day that you had with a coworker, manager, something along those lines. Tell me about your strengths and weaknesses. You can't answer these questions and say there's nothing wrong. I've never had any type of difficulty. You just can't, because we know that that's untrue. But what you don't ever want to do, oh my God, I got into it with my manager and it was just, they're not asking you for the truth per se. The expectation, though, is that you are transparent.
That's a question
that
I
is
feel like
up to you.
You should prepare for in advance. Like, you shouldn't go in cold without having a response to those two questions. What's your weakness? Well, I guess that's both sides of one question. What's your greatest strength and what's your greatest weakness? But, a lot of interviews I've heard of and I've experienced myself are those STAR. So situation, task, action, and result. And certainly at a certain level, at the level I think that a lot of us are interviewing for jobs, the expectation is that you've done something meaningful that can translate into financial benefit, right? So it's great that you converted all the materials onto a digital platform, but what did the company benefit from that? Did they gain some customers and additional revenue as a result? Did they save some money by you doing that? I think, almost like, playtime is over. Your resume and certainly your interview need to speak clearly to your financial, what you're bringing financially, or not financially, but what you're bringing in terms of performance to the company. I think we lost Catherine. Catherine, you still there? Okay, Catherine.
I'm here and I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, I hear you, I think, but I can't see. It says poor signal. So, okay, I've got a comment. Now I'm noticing that a lot of employers conduct phone screening prior to the actual phone interview. I can't remember any interview I've had in the last year that did not have a phone interview. It used to be someone would call you and say, is this Erica? Yes, it is. Well, were you interested in applying for this position? Yes, I am. We'd like to schedule something for you, next week. Does that work? Okay, hang up the phone. That's the end. Now, I think probably, as you mentioned, Catherine, there are so many people that they're going through that they just don't have time to bring all those people in. So they want to, whittle it down, via phone, which, it could be good for you or not so good for you. Whittle it down so that, they're only looking at maybe a handful of candidates from maybe 500. So I think that's exactly what that phone screen is designed to do. It's to weed out I hate to say it, but the people who are just not even close to being a fit. I've never applied for a job that I was not qualified for, but apparently it happens quite a bit. You have people who don't have the requisite skills, the degrees, and they apply for these jobs. And because you have, both the ATS system and maybe a 21-year-old recruiter who is going through these resumes, and they're like, oh, keyword, it said dishwasher. So yeah, she probably knows how to design dishwashers. It said dishwasher on there, so I'm gonna pass her through. So to Janice's point, I think phone screens are the new hurdle. You know, if you can't make it through that, you're not gonna obviously move on in the process. So
the reality of the phone screening is, if you can't convey to me all of the wonderful things that you've done, and I'm not looking at you, and you have your document in front of your face, which you should, then there's no way that once you get in front of me, you will be able to move me.
Is there a way?
And that's the reality.
Is there a way here in Houston? Is so competitive, and like I said, you know, the people who are screening you out are not even people who are experts in your field. So, you know, sometimes
that's not always the case.
Sometimes I'm just like, you know, why am I even, I'm just speaking honestly. I'm not saying I do this. This is just my thoughts. Is, you know, why am I even, you know, spending this time trying to convince you, and you don't know anything about engineering or science or anything like that. I'm all in my mind saying, I don't want to talk to you. I want to talk to the hiring manager, because that's who is going to know what I've done and understand it. Is there a way? We're not talking about short circuiting the process, but is there a way that we can go around so we can get directly to the hiring manager? How do you do that? And maybe that's what you were going to speak about, the email that we talked about from last time.
So that is a double-edged sword. Sometimes the reason why you can't find the hiring manager's info, or the hiring manager is not the one reaching out, is because they don't want to be found.
That's true.
That's first and foremost. They have a department to run.
Right.
They have another job to do. This interviewing process is a facet of that job. Having had to hire and go through that myself and do my regular duties, I understand completely as to why I wouldn't necessarily want you reaching out to me. The people who I considered seriously had my contact information, and they were able to reach out to me, you know, like at their leisure. But I controlled that from the standpoint of, I provided that. Nothing irritated me more than when I got an email from somebody and I had absolutely no idea who they were or where they came from. I don't have time to sit and necessarily go through your email and give it the due diligence it may deserve, because one, it's unsolicited, and I have another job to do.
Right.
So it's not personal.
Right.
That's the reality of the situation.
Right.
Now, the flip side of it is, by the job market being so competitive right now, there are some hiring managers who will appreciate that extra step. And you know, doing the research. Now, networking, again, I'll use this word. It should be something in your vocabulary. It should be something that you do. We naturally trust the word of another individual quicker than we would reading your resume, right? So if you don't necessarily reach out to this person firsthand, befriend someone that might just be able to get your resume in front of you. Right. I've done it a bunch of times where I've turned in resumes to people that I did not know. And, you know, I told the truth because of my relationship. Right. The people got interviewed. Now, whether or not they got the job, that was on them. I've done my part. I got you in front of somebody. Right. And I want to address this question in regards to the stories. We're not talking about, well, let me read the question. I've been advised to be straight to the point with response versus the stories. I agree to have the story for the actual face-to-face and phone interview, depending on the vibe of the interviewer. So when I say story, I do not mean Little Red Riding Hood, over the river, through the woods. That's where the STAR acronym comes into play. Give me the situation. Tell me what you did. Tell me how you solved it. Right. That's what that is. Situation, task, action, result. Right. What happened? What was it that you were supposed to do? What is it that you did? How did it turn out? That should take you all of 35 to 40 seconds. Right. Period. I don't need the extra additives. That's the storytelling in which I'm discussing. And it helps people follow you. Okay. Because if I don't have any idea, you know, of what it is that you do, say I'm a recruiter. If you tell me a story and you can explain it simply, which is how your resume is supposed to be written, right, I can follow you. means that you have a different type of skill. You're relatable.
Right.
You can break down what it is that you do and explain it to anyone. There's an old adage that goes something along the lines of, if you know how to do it. And that's exactly what that is. If you are qualified for a
adage again, cut out. Say it again.
If you can't train it, you don't know how to do it. There's like 37 differences of that, but that's how it makes it real for me. So it means that if you can't explain to me what you do, or if you can't show me in simple terms, you don't fully understand your own position. Now, there is a double-edged sword to that. Some people just don't have the ability to train, but that's a different conversation. But that's the reality of it. Like, you know, offline, we were having a conversation. I'm very confident that you'll be able to explain to me, you know, what we were discussing, and I'll get it. I'm not going to walk away from this being able to, you know, do what you do for a living, but it's all about understanding and being relatable. And that's what effective communication is. That's what effective selling is. And that's what you're doing in an interview. You're selling yourself to someone that does not know you from a can of paint. You're conveying to them why you are exactly the right fit to solve their problem or fit their need. And at the same time, you're gathering the information to make sure that they're the right fit for your need. You need a job, per se. And this job, you know, will satisfy that, maybe. Because you may get in the interview, because I've gotten in interviews and I just did not like the vibe of the company. And I, you know, I walked away from it like, okay, I actually hope they don't call me back, because I don't necessarily know if this is someplace that I would want to work. And then there have been other times where, you know, I got in the interview and I was like, oh my goodness, like this is going to be phenomenal. These people seem great. So all of these things are to be taken into account. So I'm trying to make sure that I covered everything. So we've got to the face-to-face. The question and answer portion we discussed. So let's talk about your mannerism. If you are the type of person that speaks with your hands, like I do, keep your hands folded in your lap. Yeah, that's not always necessarily well received. If you don't know what to do in regards to that, mimic your interviewer. If, you know, they're the type of person that speaks with their hands, then that may be a good sign that it's okay, but you still do it sparingly. You know, you try to avoid it. Women, we are ladies at all times. You sit up straight, square shoulders. You can cross your legs slightly, cross them at the ankles. That's the safest way to go. Men, don't cross your legs at the ankles, but you know, you sit up straight, and again, hands to your side. You can fold them in your lap. You never sit with your arms folded. It's just certain things that give the wrong impression during interviews.
You know, you bring up a very valid point that I think if some of us were to see ourselves in these interviews, we would probably be appalled. You know, not that we're intentionally doing things, but I mean, just think, hopefully you're not interviewing very frequently. You're doing that, you know, either internally, maybe every couple of years, or externally, maybe, you know, more infrequently than that. So that's not something that we're doing regularly enough to probably be cognizant of what we're doing wrong. So, you know, maybe that's a topic for another Blab by itself is, you know, can we figure out some kind of way so that we can maybe do mock interviews so that, you know, the ladies can see this is how I know you think you're fabulous, and you are, but this is how you read on camera. And I was sharing with one of the members that my very first Blab, this is kind of an aside, but my very first Blab I did with another engineer named Erica as well. And she shows up looking like Mrs. America. She's got the hair and the makeup. She looks fabulous. And I showed up with my Georgia Tech t-shirt and my hair was all over my head. And I just had, I looked in the mirror before I went on air. So I was like, yeah, this looks pretty good. But viewing myself on camera is a totally different thing. So that's the closest that we have to being able to see what the interviewer sees, right? So, unless they interviewed you and tape recorded it, you won't ever know how you actually did. But I think the things you're saying are it seems so elementary. You are not saying anything, that you should get a Nobel Prize for, right? This is all very basic things that you were talking about, but I feel like, oh my gosh, you're telling me this. I know this, but I'm still doing these things.
And I think that that's the part of interviewing that people take for granted. They make it harder than it has to be. It's first and foremost, it's in-person interaction. This is another human being. So take away that I need to get something from this person, and that takes away all of the nervousness, which then, causes you to just completely blow it.
Right.
But the next side of that is self-awareness is a very, very serious thing. It's a part of emotional intelligence. It's something that you absolutely, have to know. And emotional intelligence would be a blab for a different conversation for those who don't know, but that's something that's that is something that is very, very key and critical. You mentioned, we absolutely have to. You mentioned the on-camera viewpoint. When I used to run the program in the Austin community, I used to encourage the gentlemen to record themselves, right? Call, your voicemail or whatever the case may be, and practice your what they call a 30-second commercial or your elevator pitch or whatever it is that you call it, which is the answer to why would I hire you?
Right.
And you can hear how you sound to someone else. The flip side of that is now it is highly likely that you will be interviewed like we're doing this blab. I've been on interviews like that because most hiring managers now are not in the same city and state with you. They are somewhere else. Their HR department is either outsourced or their corporate headquarters, which is out of state. So then what happens? That's the purpose of the phone interviews. That's the purpose of the webcast interviews. Again, can you handle yourself in all of these situations? And yes, that's the good thing about this Periscope phenom that's out there now. It's a blessing and a curse, but it helps people become comfortable, with being on screen in any position whatsoever. That is a very common interview practice, and you have to be aware of how you present yourself and how you come across to other people. If you have the resting bee face, which a lot of us, that is something that we have to address. Because if you're in an interview looking at me like this, you're sending the wrong vibe. I really don't want to talk to you anymore because I can, pretty much see that how you're going, what my interactions with you will be like. And that's not the impression that you want to give, because you're probably a really nice person. But again, I don't have once to get to know you. You're in an interview with me.
I bet people who have resting bitchy face, I bet you, they probably have a lot going on in their lives. And that's why, because what I think it is, I think you're thinking, right? Well, that's not a good one because I'm laughing, but I think you're thinking, and that comes across as frowning. And, I want to do another blab about attitude, because I've seen, I think I told you this, several job postings that spoke. Now we're talking about mid to senior level people. We're not talking about, on fries at McDonald's, that spoke to positive attitude, uplifting attitude. And I'm thinking, did you ask Jack Welch at GE when he interviewed whether he had positive, uplifting attitude? I don't know, where this is coming from, but it seems to be, something that I'm noticing more frequently. And like I said, Black women have, an added disadvantage that sometimes people may think, we may have an attitude just for being a Black woman. And so we certainly don't want to convey that. So we want to probably spend some time talking about that on a whole separate blab about what your vibe conveys. And you may be legitimately pissed. You may have a reason. I feel like I've had some reasons around the time of some interviews to feel that way, but you cannot let that come across in your interview. Whatever it is, you have to put it away, box it up, whatever. And then, when you come out of the interview, you can kick a can over if you want to, but you've got to get rid of that, prior to and in the interview.
In 2016, we are in a customer service oriented world. Why, regardless of if you're the CEO and or the janitor, you need to be personable and you need to be friendly. That is why you see that. Because people take that for granted. People think because they're the one that sits in the corner office, they can treat people any type of way. Not today. Mm-hmm. Okay. People will hurt you. People will sue you. There are too many opportunities that will ultimately hinder a company as a whole because of an attitude. And no one's going to lose their livelihood because you don't know how to deal with people. Right. It's not an option. So now, which goes back to the emotional intelligence thing, companies are spending, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year for leadership development for their leaders because they understand that these doors will close because you don't know how to treat people. Right. So at the end of the day, I'm not going to say that I don't care about your aches and woes outside of this workplace, but that's not your position here. I don't hire, because I want to be your BFF and I want to be your counselor. I hire you to service or to provide a service. So if I hire you, and like you said, most of us are mid to senior level, so we have a different amount of zeros before, like that decimal point. So you should know how to behave. These are not conversations that I should have with you. You should not walk around with your feelings on your face and or your sleeve. At this point in time, you should be more mature than that. Something that I encourage, and which is why my 16-year-old now is working at White Castles, she's gonna learn. If you can't make it in food service, you can't make it anywhere.
Yeah, if you can't serve the public, yeah. I mean, it's great. I think it's great. I didn't have to work. When I was in high school, I chose to work. At 15, I worked as a bagger at Jewel's. And you learn a lot about humility and working with the public when you are serving people. So even if you don't need the money, not us, because hopefully we won't have to go backward. But certainly, people starting in your career, if you could do some time working with the public, it will give you a newfound appreciation because it's a challenge. It's a challenge. And you want to be able to, regardless of what they say and do to you, you want to maintain your composure at all times because you're a professional, whether you're a professional grocery store bagger like I was, or you're a professional leading a, Fortune 500 company. You still have to, be positive, keep your game face on, especially as Black women. I can't stress that enough. And we probably need to have, like I said, multiple blabs talking about this because I feel like because of our challenges, sometimes we, get frustrated and then we have issues on the job and then we want to leave jobs. We, bring this over into interviews. So it's like a vicious cycle. So I feel like, this could be probably a 2-hour blab, honestly, but we'll make sure that we keep this and things like this, because what we're trying to do, what Catherine and I are trying to do is, move us forward. I see lots of videos and blabs and they're fun and they're talking about, what they watched on TV last night and, what what the latest Rihanna song means and all that stuff. And that's great. I'm not knocking those things, but I think most of us have kids or families. And so any time apart from them, this hour that, you all are spending with us, you want to get the most of it. If it's not talking about something that's going to, lift you higher, then you got to move on and do something else. So, I want to emphasize that, whatever we do, with the Blabs will be to edify, to help, to empower, to encourage, and all that, so that we can move on up to the next level. So.
And I hate to do this, but we have to end on time because I have a family time schedule and my children have already peaked it.
Uh-oh, your boss. That was your boss that called in. Your bosses are coming to get you. Well, with that, we will drop off. We'll end right on time unless anybody has any questions. I think we had a couple questions, throughout. So I feel like hopefully we've answered any questions. But if you do have questions, please send those to me. Email those to me, Erica at bwiseusa.org. And we'll make sure that we take your questions and suggestions for future Blabs and schedule those accordingly. Catherine is with every month. So, stay tuned. We'll get our heads together and figure out what next month's Blab is going to be all about. But certainly if you have any questions or insight or anything like that, shoot me an email, or you can reach out to Catherine as well. And with that, I don't get any more questions. So I want to thank everybody who joined in this evening. Hopefully you all got something out of it. I know I always do. And we always have such a wonderful time. And an hour goes by fast. So Catherine, thank you again. All of you, Tam, Janice, April, Greek Ladders. I don't know if they're still on, but thank you all for joining in. Everyone else who joined in and didn't sign in, thank you, and hope to see you next week. So goodbye, everybody.
Bye. Have a great one.
Hi, everyone. It's Erica with BWISE, and I want to thank you all for tuning in. Stay tuned. Next week, we will be joining Tani Brown as she talks about JobWell, which is a new platform designed to recruit minorities to some positions with some companies that are looking for diversity. So stay tuned. Next week, we're going to be talking about JobWell, and look forward to talking to her. So see you guys next week. Bye-bye. Hi, everybody. It's Erica, and want you guys to tune in next week when we'll be talking to JobWell. JobWell is a new platform that's focused on recruiting minorities to some of the country's leading companies. So stay tuned. We'll be talking with Tani Brown of JobWell. Look forward to talking to her and hope to see you guys there.